Hi there, and welcome to the ATS podcast with me, Will Brown, and John Soulsby, where we break down chunks of health and fitness information into bite sized pieces, remove a bunch of the noise, and just leave what's relevant. On today's episode, episode 51, we are going to be covering the benefits of strength training for overall health and well being. I have a feeling this episode is going to be more bite sized than maybe the source material, but not as bite sized as some of our regular podcasts. Because
Um, yeah, I definitely think so. I think that the bite-sized thing of this, I would say, is everyone's always looking for that like magic pill or thing to do to stop aging, and
and here we are.
yeah, and strength training is it, and that's it. You could stop there,
Yeah,
but
I
we'll
might
go
even I
into
might
some
even
more
rename the
detail.
podcast. I might not put it as our usual title. I'll just be
Yeah,
like the one weird trick that will improve your health
yeah,
and life.
um, yeah. That's the like real basics of it, and we're going to kind of discuss a little bit about why.
Cool.
Um,
So we both have a bunch of points to discuss about strength training improving your overall health and well-being. Do we want to just go alternate points until we kind of cover them all?
Run out. Yeah, that probably sounds pretty good.
Cool. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I suppose the first one that's like maybe it makes sense once you start doing it, but like most people probably wouldn't think about is bone density, or essentially like how bone mineral like how many bone minerals are in your bone as well. And that's like one of the leading causes of um aging in general, or sarcopenia and things like that as you get older. And weight training has been shown to massively not just like reduce that, but also to kind of like completely reverse that, and you can actually increase both of those things with weight training. So lifting weights to like 80 to 90% of your max, essentially reasonably regularly, has been shown to increase bone mineral density in like your spine, your lumbar spine, your pelvis, your hip joints, your femurs. Um, and it means that if you do fall, or just general life as you get older, then you're much less likely to break something, which
So just to cover, because some people might not know, why is we started just kind of started to get there, but like, why is bone mineral density something people should like give a shit about?
yeah, so I suppose like the lower your bone mineral density, essentially the more fragile your bones are. It's like a real
Yeah,
layman's like thing.
they start looking like
Um,
meringue.
Yeah, and that is something that when you're young, you've got plenty, and then as you get older, your bones essentially like slowly eat themselves, as it were. As like a again, this is real layman terms of describing kind of what happened. Um, so there becomes less and less bone density in your um, bones, and less mineral content in them as well. So they are much weaker, which is why um, older people have such an issue with it. And actually, weirdly, one of the leading causes, or leading things that results in death in like geriatric patients, so like really old, like 80, 90 plus, is actually um, someone breaking their hip, because it leads to like immobility
Hmm.
effectively, and means you don't move, and you are at much greater risk of infection, a bunch of other stuff that ends up killing you. But it all starts with
Yeah, it
essentially
accelerates
breaking.
some other stuff. Yeah.
So if you can weight train and make that less likely to happen, good.
Yeah. I think my point would I tried to set it up to kick off to kind of follow on was the decreased risk of falls, which is
Yeah.
one of uh, the other really good benefits for people as they age. Again, if depending on the average age of our listeners, I don't have that kind of data, but if like you have relatives who are kind of getting 60, 70 years old, again, if you watch how sure on their feet they seem, and how like, again, confident. Another classic one of like looking at people's mobility or like independence of movement is watching people get up out of chairs or out like off the floor. Like if they ever sit on the floor to play with a dog or play with your kids or like grandkids or whatever. If you watch people get up, like, you'd be surprised at how people even in their 50s and stuff will struggle to easily get up from a sitting position on the floor, which is kind of concerning.
Yeah.
And strength training obviously keeps you like when you're used to actually lifting additional load, getting yourself off the floor is incredibly easy. Like your ability to move your own body around is so much less effort because you are trained up to a much higher level of fitness. Um, and
Oh,
your coordination and likelihood of actually falling in the first place as you get older decreases because you're used to using your muscles and moving around in a way where you stay strong and balanced. Like that would I think in one of the things I dug up, they did a review of 23,500 adults over the age of 60, and there was a 34% reduction in falls among those who
yeah.
participated in a well-rounded exercise program.
Which is
And
mad.
yeah, and if you
Uh,
reduce those falls, if you don't fall, you ain't gonna break your hip if you don't fall, and so like
Yeah.
all that other kind of what would be the word, like the domino effect of things that can happen after that is not as bad because you aren't gonna run into them because you're not gonna fall.
Mhm.
What was your next one?
Um, so next one was um, mainly just it kind of ties onto this, and it's like another domino effect, but like one of the tying into loss of muscle mass. Probably far more prevalent in um, women, or it's more significant in women than it is men. So most inactive adults lose 3 to 8% of muscle per decade.
Hmm.
Um, with men, that's like kind of fairly gradual. Once you hit, I think it's like 28 to 32. After that, like this is inactive. Like you'll just slowly lose muscle mass until you die.
Hmm.
Whereas with women, we obviously have the menopause, which is effectively, if you were to look at a graph, men's muscle loss is a fairly consistent 3 to 8% the entire time.
Yeah.
Um, women's would be like 3 to 8% for most of it, apart from post-menopause, where it's an absolute car crash essentially, and it all just like goes away in the space of a year or two. Um, whereas adding in resistance training, very much like bone mineral density, not only stops this decrease, but you can actually completely reverse that. And there's thousands of studies now with thousands of our participants showing that even just after 10 to 12 weeks of weight training, you gain lean muscle mass. So if you like compound that over months and years, uh, rather than losing 3 to 8% in a decade, you're quite likely to gain a very large portion. Which then knocks on to kind of, as you were saying, Will, of like you're less likely to fall, you're better at using your body overall.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Um,
Also,
yeah, I think the next one I was going to bring up is I've kind of gone for the sneakier kind of maybe like less talked about ones, or just to start with, to try and see if
mhm.
we could get some hooks in people just with the kind of niche improvements, especially because I think if people I think a big kind of trigger for getting people to start this stuff if they don't do it is having something relatable. Like they know someone who's like had a fall or
Yeah.
they have their own personal struggles with stuff. One that I really like and tout quite a lot is that it really helps you manage your blood sugar.
Mhm.
Uh, Again, is how can I break this down? Like your muscles working will use like glycogen, carbohydrate based fuel source. Um, if you have a regular activity plan that expends and uses a lot of glycogen, the likelihood that you're just going to have incredibly spiky blood sugars when you're sedentary, or well, you're going to have incredibly spiky blood sugars depending on how you manage your diet. But if you are someone who is getting towards being is it pre-risk, where they have
Yeah.
like you're on the kind of highway towards type 2 diabetes. You should probably do something about that. One way that very much helps you manage it is exercise, but also specifically weight training, because muscles have a local store of glycogen that
Yeah.
needs replening. So it's a very good way to get them used. It helps you improve your insulin sensitivity over time. Thing I had pulled up was with regards to a study following 35.7 thousand women for an average of 10 years and showed a 30% reduced risk of developing type 2 diabetes among people who engaged in strength training compared to those who were just sedentary and did nothing, which
Nice.
is pretty significant. Again, type 2 diabetes is a big problem. A lot of people get hospitalized with diabetes related complications. It becomes then like an actual full health, like an actual disease that you have to manage. Like it's not good. Um,
Yeah.
Ironically, if you are type 1 diabetic, apologies, but actually lifting weights is harder for you because it makes your insulin go, it
Yep.
makes your blood sugars go mental. So you actually have to be like really on top of managing your insulin. Saws.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting that kind of stuff, and again, like anything that prevents, like we've talked about sarcopenia, like age-related muscle loss. I'm really curious to see how the future kind of research into it goes. In that, if they could ever really differentiate between if it is purely from a standpoint of the loss occurs because of sedentariness and can therefore be prevented with activity, or if the loss is in fact just age-related and there's just an accelerated component with sedentariness,
Yeah.
sedentariness, whatever.
Um, yeah, if it's like an actual aging disease, or if it's just like as you get older, you do less and less stuff.
Yeah, like if
Like
the trend is just as people get older, they do less, like they just don't do as much
it's
and therefore lose muscle and
it's
bones.
like the classic kind of thing that people think their metabolism drastically changes once they hit like 30, let's say. And everyone's like,
Everyone loves
"Oh,
that. They're like,
you can't eat that when you're 30." It's like you fucking can. You just
yeah,
got to do as much exercise as you were when you were 16.
yeah,
There's a
you just have
guarantee you're
to,
not.
you just have to be as fucking absolute Energizer Bunny active as you are when you're 16, as well as being absolutely saturated with hormones. Like,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, mate, you can, 100%. Like,
um. So yeah. Um. But yeah, the diabetes one, that was something that's like was fairly new to me reasonably recently, not like but like is I thought was like a really, really cool
mhm.
beneficial side effect to weight training, and it's like very niche, and apparently quite powerful. So it is like really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
again, it is literally that one weird trick. Like the one weird trick
yeah.
is lifting weights.
There's another super niche one
Uh-huh,
is
uh-huh.
apparently so there's as you age, your mitochondrial content decreases. And so
Powerhouse of the
like that
cell.
also, yeah, and that also affects the like oxidative capacity of your muscle tissue. And
Right.
essentially weight training um for 10 weeks in this study again. Oh no, 6 months.
That's
Um
nice. It's even better.
you get yeah, an increased gene expression, the reversal of mitochondrial like deterioration, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty wild.
And that it's like, good for the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah. So why is mitochondrial oxidative expression important?
I actually don't know, which is so I'd literally just found this one as you were reading. Um, the measure of the muscle's maximum capacity to use oxygen in millimeters consumed per gram of muscle per hour. So your muscles need oxygen to
Mhm.
live and do exercise. So that's maybe one reason why, as you get older, you do less because your cells are literally worse at
At
using
converting it.
oxygen.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do weight,
Okay, so would this could be like the root, like the underpinning kind of biological root for like what we quote on having more energy. Like it's really hard to
yeah,
get people to believe that when you exercise, like they're already tired in life, like they are day to
yeah,
day tired individuals, and you're like, do you know what would make you not tired? And they're like, oh, anything. And you're
yeah.
just like doing more stuff, and he'll be like, that doesn't sound like a good sell. No, thank you. But
Um,
if it is via improving mitochondrial oxidation capacity, that
And
would be
yeah,
wild.
apparently the actual density of mitochondria in your cells reduces as well.
Oh shit, as you get older.
Yeah. and
And
it will reverse that
I'm
as well.
so keen to see if people can parse out whether this is because of age or because of inactivity and age type thing.
Yeah. So yeah, exercise training increases skeletal muscle mitochondrial volume density,
Yeah.
which
Um,
better helps the cell. Um, yeah, pretty cool.
Let me just open this next one that I've got. How many were in this study? Cool. So another one that is on the sneakier end of things that is probably not niche. Again, we're staying away from like, or I'm at least staying away for now from the very obvious low-hanging fruit of like, you get stronger. Like, you can
Yeah.
move your own furniture. Like, if you like gardening, you could move your own plant pots. Like, shit like that. Improves brain health. Improvements in stuff like processing speed, memory, and executive function after participating in strength training compared to people who didn't. Um, there's a bunch of this one I'm looking at right now. The mean age was like 73.9 years old with a deviation of 4 years. 69, nice, percent were female participants, and they did two different 4-month-long interventions, including high-speed resistance exercises in a training group of about 22, and some balance and band stretching type stuff. I believe this was actually in adults that had cognitive frailty already, so they
Mhm.
had some kind of marked reduction in cognitive function. I think it was diagnosed, yeah, they had it as mild cognitive impairment, physical frailty, and cognitive frailty. And the study conclusion that the group that participated, or both groups, when they did a swap over trial where they do like one does one does the other, they have a washout of doing nothing, and then they do both again but swapped.
Yeah.
Uh, both groups showed greater improvement in the intervention with high-speed resistance exercise training, in cognitive function and physical performance. So like I imagine they did. Where's the methods? I think they did like they did a grip strength and a knee extension strength at baseline at 8 weeks and 16 weeks, and yeah, they did like a gait speed test, which is like a fucking you see how they walk for old
Yeah.
people and the infirm and stuff. But they also did stuff like memory, processing speed, cognitive flexibility, working memory, executive function, where the cognitive things scored as well. So fucking a whole heap of folk got way better at the in that study just from lifting weights. Again, I think if I'm I don't really know the biology of it super well, but it has something to do with the like the repeated efforts of you like brain telling muscles to do things and muscles having to do things at varying levels of intensity or function
Hmm. Yeah.
is good for maintaining brain connection and brain processing speed. So brain is just overall healthier because it getting worked out by making muscle do things. If we want to go absolute chimpanzee level explanation, because that's all I can manage.
Yeah. Kind of leading on from that as well, then from like cognitive stuff, there's a lot of scientific literature looking into depression and training as well. General training overall, but obviously some specifically into weight
Hmm.
training. And so far, it seems a little bit of a mixed bag, like which isn't overly surprising because of, as you can imagine, depression is such a multifactorial disease that like
Hmm.
it's not just as simple as like, oh, just lift some weights, bro, you'll feel better. But um,
Maybe the heaviest things we lift are our feels.
yeah, but however, it does seem that it is powerful enough so far to say that it is something for everyone or for people to look into as a way of not treating clinical depression, but with helping with symptoms. So there was a few studies that looked at giving people a 10-week training program, and these were like both old adult and like young people with clinical depression, so not just like depression like symptoms, but actual clinically defined depression. And about 60% of them showed like benefits in their symptoms, and then the other 40% not, which is pretty cool.
Nice. That's
Um,
pretty dope. I'll piggyback that one and chuck anxiety in there as well.
yep.
There's a whole heap of research on the benefits of resistance exercise training with regards to managing symptoms of anxiety. The one I'm currently pulled up was where are we at? It's a meta from 33 RCOs, like the random clinical or random
Mm-hmm.
control, whatever's, with 1,800 participants, 1877. And yeah, had a where is it? Had a significant effect on reducing symptoms in blah 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 blah. 77% of people involved in the studies, both people who are healthy and people who have physical or mental illness. In this particular one, results or improvements were not moderated by sex or based on features of RTE. So we need to. I think the conclusion of this one stipulates that we should probably do some future research in comparing resistance exercise to like other anxiety related therapies and see like which would be better. Which could be cool because it means that like Liftington could actually get like a formal recommendation as a treatment or an intervention for people with anxiety and depression, which would be kind of sick.
Yep.
Yeah, this other one, 922 people with a mean age of 43 plus or minus 21 years, mostly like 2/3 female, 1/3 male.
Nice.
Baseline, post-intervention, computer down. RET significantly reduced anxiety symptoms by, I think they used an algorithm to work out a scoring system, but it occurred in 95% of participants. Heterogeneity was not indicated, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so overall, pretty dope.
Yeah. I suppose on the back of that one as well is also self-esteem,
Yeah,
as kind of part of anxiety, like very similar kind of cause and effect with that. Um, Probably links into depression as well. I don't not saying to be like an actual like expert in depression, but there is lots of kind of cross
yeah,
relatability between
I
those
don't
two
quite
things.
know how the cross pollination between the two works.
But yeah, essentially, if you suffer from anything of that ilk, then not just anecdotally, but the science backs up that weight training can be a very big help. You see a lot of people online when people are talking about anxiety, self-esteem issues, depression, like just go to the gym. You're like, oh, very good, yeah. Usually coming from people that have a very unhealthy obsession with going to the gym. However, it can very much help when you do it in a structured manner. So it is worth giving a bash. I think that's most of the brain gains on that one.
Yeah. Mm,
Well, that we know for now.
we could kind of jump back to. We probably should have tacked one on to the falls and the falls and bone health. One is the fact that you will also have a lower instance or likelihood of like soft tissue injury.
Yes, I was thinking that as well.
I'm about to
So
say, is your dissertation, no, or was that
this is,
yours?
yeah, no, this is literally what I did my dissertation on.
Ugh.
Admittedly, 8 or 9 years ago now, but to cut 10,000 words short, there's various reasons why you're just generally more resistant to injury. So one of them being as you weight train, your muscles are made up of lots of little, essentially cables that pull together, and that's how you do contractions. Those cables get thicker, and because they're thicker, they're harder to tear,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So because of that, they are more resistant to like your normal everyday like strains and pulls and things like that. you also get something which I thought was really cool when I literally found this out doing my dissertation. It's something called cross bridging, and everyone thinks like, well, not everyone. That's probably a lot of people think that muscles you only have the fibers going like in the way that the muscles go. So as a bicep example, you'd only think that it goes up and down between shoulder and elbow. But like what this cross bridging does is you then get muscle fibers going like perpendicular to the way a muscle would work.
Hmm.
And then what that does is spreads the load of anything you're doing across the entire muscle so you can recruit more muscle fibers,
Funky.
which is like dope. That is like, if you thought that from like an engineering point of view, it probably took humans thousands of years to figure that one out, and your body's just like, this makes sense, we'll do that.
Yeah,
So like,
does it automatically just through
um,
stress,
yeah,
essentially.
so it means if you're like loading your bicep in like just on one side, your body will slowly like make like muscle connections to use the entire bicep by like spreading it over. So you're going to have less acute loading of like one small part of muscle, which
Yeah,
is super cool. Um,
that's very
so
funky.
that's the big bang muscle fiber ones. You also get mad increases in your tendon strength. Not mad, not to the same as muscles, but like their cross section grows. And you also have something that's really cool is where the tendon joins to the muscle.
Hmm.
Um, it essentially looks like a Christmas tree. So all the little like arms go into the muscle, and then they all have other little arms like little pine needles that then go in.
Hmm.
And as you resistance train, that like doubles. So it goes from looking like a dead Christmas tree with some needles left on it to like a very healthy full Christmas tree. The surface area is massively increased, so it becomes harder and harder for you to like rip tendons away from muscles, um, which is cool.
So this would
And
be,
they're
are these things called the myotendinous junctions?
they are indeed
Oh, nice, cool.
with, without. So yeah, like, and then that happens at the where it attaches to the bone as well.
So
So
the ligaments and stuff.
yeah, so they're just like really cool ways that just reduce your chance of injury. So things are far less likely to be injured.
Hmm.
There was the biggest study was done in, I think it was Sweden. They took 5,000 um, amateur football players from like the Swedish amateur leagues,
Right.
and essentially the main one is they got a bunch of them that had been had a hamstring like tear before, which
Hmm.
is quite a common football injury, and then made a bunch of them do some resistance training, and a bunch of them just did nothing and went to the pub. And there was a 50% reduction in hamstring re-injury between the trained versus untrained, which is like insane.
That is,
To
especially
like
given it's
half.
re-injury, not like original injury, because
Yeah.
it's like you're already selecting for people who are at least prone enough to get injured that have already been injured before.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
because like one of the
Um,
again one of the there is no real like Mystic Meg way of predicting injury, but one of the most
no.
consistent ways to predict injury is previous injury. Like,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly, if you've already ripped something or torn something or pulled something real bad, like the likelihood it might happen again is higher than zero because it's already
Mm,
happened. So like,
yeah.
there needs to be something you look at to be like,
So that was really cool. And that was just with like TED. Again, you'll find most studies, if people that haven't looked at resistance training studies before,
mhm,
um, that's another point. When we say resistance training, that's just lifting weights. It's just science's fancy word of lifting weights. But resistance training studies, they're usually 12 weeks or 10 weeks, and they usually only have 10 to 14 people doing them, because to try and get any more people than that to do something consistently for more than 10 weeks is impossible. So, like, sometimes you'll see a study that has someone do something for 6 months, and you're like, how have you done that? How have you persuaded someone to train 3 times a week for 6 months? Um, but yeah, so you have to kind of draw these conclusions from like, okay, well, they did this for 12 weeks and it resulted in this. So, in theory, that should keep on going. And therefore, after a year, 2 years, 5 years, like the benefits are just like astronomically good.
Mhm.
If I'm trying to get the point there. So for a lot of this stuff, it's like you're having to make a lot of the time you'll only see benefits in like 1 to 3%. But that's doesn't sound like much, but that's based off of 12 weeks to 6 months. So if you compound that over like 5 years, 10 years of lifting weights, it's
Oh
like
yeah,
wild.
huge. The
Um,
another one will be that it increases your metabolism. It is actually one of the things that does it, not like
yep.
these fucking teas that these chicks with big butts sell on Instagram.
What?
I know exactly.
I've been drinking tea for years.
My credit card, no. Um, I think it's about triple the. I think it's triple the amount. I think 1 pound because American units. Freedom units. 1 pound burns about 2 calories per hour, and 1 pound of
yeah.
muscle burns about 6.
Yeah.
So you end up burning a whole heap.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like if over your lifetime you've added 20 kilos of muscle mass,
Oh yeah, that's
which
like
doesn't sound like much, but oh hell, that will look like a lot.
oh, 20 kilos is an
if
enormous amount.
like, I think people get put off by like actually how much muscle mass even a kilo is. Like, if you think about the last time you bought like a kilo of beef,
Yeah.
like, my god, it's
Um,
mad.
what did I just say? It burns per hour. 6. So on
6.
22 kilos of muscle mass, you were
It's like 120
44
calories a day.
pounds. 44 times 6. Yeah,
Yeah.
264. Yeah, you're burning 264 extra calories just hanging out,
Yeah.
which is kind of wild. And that doesn't obviously take into account. That's assuming your muscle has increased by that much. That's not taking into account muscle you have already got.
Yeah. And that's just we've mentioned um, basal metabolic rate as well. That's just like completely passive. You don't have to do anything for that.
Yeah, that literally
Um,
like if you sat in a room doing nothing all day, like if you were actual proper COVID lockdown for
yeah.
a whole day, if you had 20 kilos of muscle extra and were sitting in a room doing fuck all, you would burn 264 more calories than if you didn't have that muscle. Like
Yeah.
that's number one. That's an entire protein bar extra. That's like,
Yeah.
and if you again assume that over some people, most people will build a decent bit more than that if they resistance train for any length of time.
Hmm.
They'll probably end up burning a whole heap more at rest, and so therefore probably be happier because they'll be able to eat more food.
Yeah.
And two, yeah, they will just have an easier time of things. Another one of having more muscle, you look leaner. Like you look better with your clothes off if you are that way inclined and are like, I would like to look like different to I currently do. Like if you are like, I currently dislike that I look like a half deflated waterbed, then doing some resistance training and getting a whole heap of muscle on will do that certainly, and not in a like, oh my god, I'm gonna look like those guys on the magazines, or like I'm gonna be huge. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Like there is there are a few instances from professional rugby S&C coaches that I have heard where they talk about players that actually put on too much muscle too quickly. But aside from those genetic anomalies, no one's going to be. If you were genetically predisposed to put on muscle that well, you would already be muscular, and you wouldn't be listening to this.
Yeah.
Like those are the freaky Islander people, or like I mean they could be from any culture, but those are the specific in this case because it was a New Zealand rugby team podcast where they were talking
Yeah.
about some guy who literally they had to decrease his training in the off season because he would just come in too heavy. He'd just get too
Yeah.
jacked and be like he can't play it
Too
that weight.
yoked.
Yeah, he's like he can't play at 140. He's too heavy.
This
He needs to play at like 120 or whatever, 125.
this is another tangent. But I wonder what would happen to powerlifting if it was like enough to be like professional, and like these
Oh,
animals got into it.
mate, like the people who are involved in the multi-million-dollar sports are the real freaks. Like a few of
Yeah.
them might make it. You get freaks in powerlifting anyway, but like the real freaky people,
Yeah.
like Shaquille O'Neal, plays basketball, could still probably like do the damage on the 120
Oh
plus
yeah.
world records. Like
Oh
he would get way closer than anyone would bet, I think.
100%.
Man is enormous. He's also probably the only person that's gonna have be lean in the 120 pluses and
Yeah.
still be good because he's
Yeah.
like 7'6" or whatever the fuck. He's just huge.
Um,
The guy probably needs fat grips to actually make the bar sit right in his hands.
yeah, definitely. Um, cool. So before we get on a mad tangent
Yeah.
on a already quite long episode, another one that I thought was kind of cool is where was it? Chronic pain. So it's like quite
Oh yeah.
interesting one. So um, one third of adults in community samples report lower back pain during the prior month.
Mhm.
Pretty mad, 1 out of 3. And two-thirds will report an episode of lower back pain during the prior year. And this is from a massive review study, but the economic cost of lost time at work from common pain conditions for the US workforce was 61 billion every
That's
year. um,
that's a lot.
so yeah, and then so this is, and then
Think
from a
about all the
UK
guns
point
they
of
could
view,
buy with that money.
I know. And
So
then
many
from
tanks.
the um, Office of National Statistics, Gov UK, reasons for illness in 2022, minor illness. I don't know if this is like 29 out of 100. Anyway, essentially, minor illness was number one.
Mhm.
Other was number two, and musculoskeletal problems, i.e., chronic pain and muscle issues, was number three.
I like
Others
how you get
is,
other.
well, other, I think it's just like, so here is accidents, poisonings, infectious diseases, skin disorders, diabetes, and the big one of coronavirus. So that's why it's number.
Well, diabetes is covered by resistance training. Like we already covered that, so that
Yeah.
could get you could make a dent in
Um,
number 2 and 3 on the statistics. Easy.
yeah. Whereas other back in 2019 was third. So musculoskeletal
It
was
must
second.
just be the COVID.
It would, yeah, massive jump in
Although I'm
COVID.
surprised that days off work during the pandemic was not like number 1 was not coronavirus. Like the
I
current
know.
pandemic.
Yeah. Apparently 21. Oh no, 21 other was number one.
Okay, fine. I was gonna be
So there
like,
we are.
it's a bit wild to be like,
Bit
oh,
sus.
like yeah, we have a big global pandemic on the go, but also like people still just have low
Um,
mood.
oh yeah, so it's just purely percentage. So 29% were minor illnesses or colds and all that shit.
Poisoning was an
And
interesting one.
yeah, 10% to 15% is musculoskeletal problems essentially.
I wonder if
Um,
hangovers come under poisoning.
here, probably. Having just noticed this, this is just me looking at 4 bar charts and making a gross assumption. So this is not scientific at all. But in 2019, it was 16% for musculoskeletal problems, and
Hmm.
now in 2022, it's 10%.
That's because people can go out and go to the gym again, mate.
Well, I was about to say, it's like based on what I'm about to say, do you think that's because more people are exercising after the pandemic?
Yeah, because everyone was stuck inside during the
and
pandemic, so getting out and about would be good.
we're
Or do
like,
you mean between
yeah,
2019 and 2023 or 22?
22, yeah, between 2019,
Oh,
so
so
pre-pandemic.
pre-pandemic and thingy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, maybe that then.
like that's pure conjecture because
Yeah,
essentially
but it's
what I'm
the
about
kind
to
that
say
adds to
is,
our case, so therefore it's
yeah,
correct.
yeah, but as what I'm about to say is, resistance training shows a marked reduction in chronic pain of low back pain, essentially, along with fibromyalgia and osteoarthritis and other things. But
Yeah,
essentially, chronic pain in general, resistance training and exercise in general helps. So
but yeah. I think that's all my points. I haven't
yeah,
thought of any spur of
apart
the
from the
moments.
absolute mad obvious ones, and I say mad obvious, might not be mad obvious to other people, but it helps to reduce body fat for a whole variety of reasons. One
Yeah.
being increase in metabolism. Um,
The other being, if you are currently only fat and bones, adding muscle to that equation drives down the percentage of you that is body fat. So,
mhm.
statistically.
Oh yeah, the where was it? The other one. Something that I have forgotten more than I know about it. But it just generally improving cardiovascular health. So your resting blood pressure goes down.
Hmm.
And improving your blood lipid profiles. So that's essentially cholesterol.
Oh mate, the big cholesterol. It's a
without
big myth now.
yeah, without getting too into it with your high density lipoproteins and all that stuff.
No, you want
Makes
yeah,
that better.
you want those guys.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
essentially, yeah, we mentioned before, but essentially you've got low density, which is like peanut butter clogging up your arteries, and then you got high density, which is like sandpaper that takes it all away. You want the
yeah,
high one.
that's getting big heaters and big pelters right now. Like people are
Is
not
it?
happy. Yeah, people are pretty upset with the old lipoprotein arterial plaque kind of myth that they're calling it now. So I'm curious to see what the
Right.
justification around the like the function of arterial plaque and lipoprotein related cholesterol issues and stuff is, but that's a topic for
But
another day.
I was going to say, by people, do you mean the scientific community or
Nah, we mean
just
nutters on
people?
social media.
Right. Okay. Good.
They might as well be one and the same in this day. Well, to me anyway.
Well, yeah. And then also vascular conditions. So, like, essentially the health of your arteries, and they affect blood pressure and tons of stuff. So, good
Nice.
things in general. But yeah, that's all the main ones. I'm sure there's tons of other small things. There'll be hundreds of things we've not even found out yet.
Yep.
But yeah, the one magic pill that will make you healthy forever. Weight
Lift
training.
some weights. Yeah. Do some exercise, but also lift some weights. If you
Yeah,
currently lift weights, mint it. Go send this podcast to someone who doesn't that you know, and be like, y'all should lift
get in,
weights.
get in the gym, normie.
Yep. And we will catch you in the next one.